Welcome back. You're listening to Find Out Extra on talkSPORT 2. Adi Oladipo, the great Gareth Davies. All right. It's been a crazy week, I think it's fair to say, in the world of boxing. It was all going very, very nice. And then we were all hit with, as I said at the top, the seismic news of this new boxing league. Dana White, Nick Khan of the WWE, and Turki Alalshikh. Dana White actually spoke a bit more about this new venture post UFC on the weekend. This is what he had to say about the deal.
When you talk about the business of boxing, one of the biggest issues in it is that the guys who are in boxing can't get on and they never do deals, and it took Turkey to come along with money to basically make them work together, right? So in that respect, when you've come on to do this for Turkey, do you almost have to cut out these other guys because they're just going to make your job harder, right? If you're having to negotiate with every promoter in the sun, do you have to come out and eventually just get rid of these guys, lock them in Alcatraz, like Turkey said, and just do it yourself?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm more focused on, if you think about the UFC when we bought the company, we had 3 letters, the old octagon, and 12 contracts. We had to build the thing from the ground up. I think that the sport of boxing is so broken, it needs to be built from the ground up again. And that's what I'm going to focus on doing. You know, he's got some commitments over the next 18 months with a lot of guys and a lot of fights and a lot of different promoters. But I talk a lot about USA's Tuesday night fights. You know, they put on like the best up and coming fighters all fought on that show and then became big pay-per-view stars. That's what it's the same thing that happened with the UFC. You know, we started on Spike TV, we built stars, and they became pay-per-view stars. I want to do the same thing with boxing.
So is there a world where you're on stage with De La Hoya and Bob Arum one day, all playing nice?
I mean, let's hope not. I would never say never, but that is not what I plan to do.
Dana White there speaking to the media. I actually watched that whole post-fight press conference. He was asked more questions about the TKO Boxing League from UFC media than the actual UFC event, which I found very, very interesting, Gareth. Well, look, a couple of standout things he said there from that press conference. You can go and watch it in full, by the way. He said boxing's broken and needs to be rebuilt. He spoke about one belt, getting rid of the current governing bodies, WBA, the main ones, the main big four, WBA, IBF, WBC, and WBO, and fewer weight classes. Obviously, boxing originated as 8 weight classes, or at least that was the big 8, right? And then there were the junior divisions of those weight classes, and cruiserweight got involved, and now bridgerweight as well. So there's now 18 weight classes. Let's start from the top, if you like. What have you made of this TKO Boxing League? Before we kind of dive into is boxing broken, what have you made of this new thing coming when it all seemed as though it was working so well with all the boxing promoters in bed with each other finally and big fights happening?
Well, it was surprising only because of the aggressive nature in which it was announced, that it was going to crush all the other outfits. It was going to crush everything else. Now, if you're going to rebuild boxing that's been around 160 years professionally and goes back, dated to the 1650s as bare knuckle, the first records in the UK go back to the 1650s. And obviously, bare knuckle fighting has happened all around the world since time immemorial. Ring Magazine's been around 102 years. I rejoiced when Turki Alalshikh bought that. He's got the Ring Magazine belts, and he's got the Ring Magazine, which is the Bible of boxing. I mean, there's a formidable array of people who write for it, are now working with it. It's brought the sport together. So when I assessed all those things, and he's got the Ring Magazine belt and the rankings panel from that, and I think it's a pretty good rankings. It's a more accurate rankings panel than you get with the sanctioning bodies that's generally self-interested beyond, a couple of people.
Agreed.
You know, like I think without disrespecting Fabio Wardley, who I think is a magnificent young talent, I think he's ranked number 1 or 2 with one of these sanctioning bodies at the moment. And when in reality, he's probably 9th in the world, something like that, based on 9th or 10th. So I was in shock and awe. First of all, I mean, I knew that these talks were going on behind the scenes. It was no secret in the sport, and my feeling was, and my feeling is still, that I think they will focus on an American-led process to begin with, because outside America, most of the fighters, unless they're going to be taken out of contract with managers and promoters who are already very, very established, and I'm talking elite level now, I'm talking top 20 in the world here when I'm talking, all right? Because I think that's what they're going to focus on to begin with. I think America needs work, but I think we're fine over here. I thought boxing was in a good place after the vast, and I'm guesstimating, billion-dollar investment from Turki Alalshikh over the last 18 months. So it is a curveball. There's no doubt about it. I've spoken to a dozen people in the industry over the last week, Addy, and no one wants to be strongly criticising Turki Alalshikh, and we shouldn't, because he's done so much that's great for the sport. It's easy to say it's broken and you're going to go back to other weight divisions. But in this sport, we are nothing without the fighters. And yes, let's find out who number one is in every division. There's nothing wrong with all the divisions. If you concertina them, that's fine in a certain league. And it will reduce the number of champions, but it will reduce opportunities for some of the fighters, I think. But I do think ultimately, and they've got a lot of work to do to sort it out, that it will end up landing in America to begin with the odd event outside. That's my take on it from this point right now. What the managers and the promoters do will depend on how they shuffle and rejig and how long their deals are ongoing with Turki Alalshikh and Riyadh season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the language used, and I don't know if it's a miscommunication thing from Turkey. Obviously, look, English isn't his first language, but I think that the word crushing, when speaking about sort of other promoters, I think was the one that kind of sent alarm bells ringing across the sort of the media landscape.
Do you think he meant better than any others?
No, I honestly do think he meant crushing. I'm being honestly. Look, we sat with him. This is a guy that doesn't mix his words. He's very strong and very strong, very ruthless in his thoughts and opinions, and will say what he wants to say. He doesn't hide and shy behind, which can be a good thing. At least you know where you stand with him. And I think the way in which he's looked at Dana and the way Dana has, if you like, crushed all the other promotions, right? When it comes to MMA, right? UFC is so far number one. Number two is so in the distance, it doesn't even worry about number two, whether that be Bellator or PFL or ONE FC, whatever. So I think he does mean crush. I'm with you as well. I think America is where this thing begins, and maybe is where they put all their eggs into the baskets, just because HBO's gone, Showtime's gone, PBC only do 4 or 5 events a year with Amazon. So America looks like it needs the help. Whereas over here in Europe and the UK, I feel like we're fine. Some might listen to this and say, 1 second, TNT are no longer in the boxing business, really, right? With Queensberry leaving them. Ben Shalom doesn't do enough events on Sky. So maybe it does look like we're struggling over here. But as you know, fighters are fighting over here. Fighters are getting paid over here. And boxing is doing good numbers. So I do think it's an American-led movement more than a worldwide domination. But I do think it will grow to be a worldwide or an attempt of a worldwide takeover. I do. I think they're trying to take over boxing.
Even before lockdown, we were only traveling to America really en masse for those Tyson Fury fights. Anthony Joshua hadn't cracked America. He'd cracked stadiums here. The shift, obviously, everyone kind of optically remembers the last 18 months, and the shift has been stadiums here and stadia in or the venues in Saudi Arabia. I think, in terms of, if you're looking at it like the deep state, there could come a time when Turki Alalshikh says, my work here is done, and I'm going to let you guys, you're going to do what you got to do now. And I'm going to focus on America because that's a bigger market. I don't know if they've thought about, well, they will have thought about the fact that MMA seems to have a limitless global reach, and they do numbers, and they've taken it from, buying that company for £3 million 25, 30 years ago into a $20 billion industry that's worth 20 billion anyway. And the ceiling for boxing may be lower than it is for MMA ultimately, and that's the kind of ceiling they're looking at. They may have underestimated just how many boxing fans you can draw to an event.
I think he, and look, you've spoken to him so many times, so have I, and every time he talks, he always goes back to boxing in the 80s and what it was in America, where it was never as big as the NFL or the NBA, but there were certain events that were on par with the biggest events in world sport. And I think he thinks that boxing in America can get back to that. There are stars I've noticed of recent. He's pushing fighters on his own page like Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia, people that he thinks can sort of bring this new audience back to where boxing used to be in the 80s and the early 90s in America. In America.
How many times have I said to you, the four kings, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, fought 9 times in the 80s, yeah? So over a period of 9 years, a period of 7 years, they fought 9 times, I think it was. If you put Ryan Garcia, Teo Lopez, Keyshawn Davis, Devin Haney, Tank Davis, Shaka Stevenson, get them all in a similar group, you can have 14 fights. That will ignite.
And I think that's what he's trying to do. And I think that's what he's trying to do. Hence this event here. Yeah, with Ryan versus Rolly Romero, and the winner fights Devin, who fights Jose. I think he's trying now to do that. I think
he's should be doing with Dana. That is because that would revolutionize. Because when you go to America, you go there regularly, and obviously I've been going there many, many times. You have to fight for noise and on the very, very busy, crowded sporting and entertainment landscape in America, don't you? You have to really fight for that space and do something special. And I think Turkey's spoken to him, and he knows that Dana's special in that way. What I do think we need to look at is the UFC. Yes, it brings all fighters in eventually. Michael Venom Page leaves Bellator and comes to UFC eventually. The big champions in PFL and Bellator, which is now defunct, have come to the UFC eventually. They are one league, though. That's the thing. We haven't always had champion versus champion in that league, and they're obviously the most powerful league. And also, there is a little bit of a record. They've got a record of probably needing to change the way they treat their fighters a little bit. And there's lawsuit action.
A little bit. It's horrendous. Let's be honest. I mean, the Dana White, he must honestly look at the numbers that some of these fighters are getting paid in Riyadh season through Turkey, and it must blow his mind. And I think the link up with Dana from a business standpoint, as someone that will trim the fat, is good for business. I don't know if it's good for the fighters. If I'm a boxing fighter right now, I'm thinking, whoa, I hear a lot about how these UFC guys get severely underpaid. I start to get a little worried because we know, I mean, look, you only have to go and look at the Francis Ngannou story. They do not pay their fighters anything near what boxers get paid unless your name is Conor McGregor.
What they do, but they're Machiavellian in their meritocracy and marketing ability. If fighters, the only fighters that have earned massive money, Anderson Silva, John Jones, George St. Pierre, had share of the pay-per-view. These are the guys. Bisping was paid well at the end, in equivalent to about another 10 or 12 people. And obviously Conor McGregor is the standout, not Khabib Nurmagomedov. And latterly, I imagine Pereira's getting a very big shell. John Jones. They haven't managed to get John Jones and Aspinall in the ring recently. They haven't managed to get Conor McGregor in because they earned a lot of money and they left the sport. In boxing, there's an algorithm that is just as weird. At the very top, the top 3% earn life-changing money where they never work again. The other 97% don't. In the last 18 months, we've had a false economy with fighters being paid more because of the investment of the Saudi Arabians. So if they're going to do it, Addy, I think it'll be a balance of Turkey's money and Dana's muscle and brain.
Yeah, and that could actually be a very, very good combination. Obviously, this has ruffled feathers when it comes to promoters, and everyone wanted to hear from Eddie Hearn, just because Eddie Hearn, I think most people view as the #1 boxing promoter. I think that's fair to say now. You spoke to Eddie. This is what Eddie Hearn had to say about the TKO Boxing League announcement.
Turkey's made it red hot, and I think there's a lot of potential. But anytime someone like Dana and a company like TKO and Nick Khan want to actively get involved in the sport, it's for a reason. And that reason is because he's flying at it. It's obviously no coincidence that the announcements come with the completion of the top-ranked ESPN contract. So they clearly have the ESPN dates, which is a big start for them. But I don't really know. I mean, all I've known about for the last 6 months is that they've done a deal with TKO and it's a league format for boxing.
So you don't know the detail?
Not really, no.
Are you expecting to meet with Dana White and Turkey and Disney?
So I've had loads of phone calls. Oh, well, Turkey. Okay. First thing I have to say is Turkey's a showman in a way as well. So, sometimes he'll do a video with me saying, "You are finished, stick to snooker and darts," and it's like, I don't know if we're going to have any involvement in the league. Do we want any involvement in the league? That's a decision we'll make as a business.
Do you want involvement?
I mean...
Or does it matter?
I mean, if His Excellency and Dana White are involved, would I like to be involved? Yeah, I mean, without seeing the structure, I guess so, But at the same time, there's also Riyadh season events, Ring Magazine events, WBC Grand Prix, and we're doing a lot with His Excellency anyway. So I don't know if the league looks to encompass, encapsulate other promoters and fighters, or they're just going to say, no, we're going to build some talent and run this form.
I like Eddie's response. I was very interested to hear what Eddie had to say, just because Eddie has done a lot of business with Turkey of recent. I know Eddie looks up to Dana White as well, or at least he did. I don't know if he looks up to him anymore, because Eddie will probably say he's on par with Dana White now. But I think Eddie's response was fine, not concerned. We did business with them. We will continue to do business with them. But, there was life in Matchroom before Saudi. I think that's quite important for him to say.
Look, predictably, and I say predictably because I thought Eddie would have this response, he's probably in Dana's DMs right now. He said he's very excited about the new move. Of course he is, because a lot of things he's done, and you're involved in it to a certain extent, even though you work for DAZN, you're around it. He's created his own media company that promotes Matchroom, which is exactly what the UFC did all those years ago. He's as inventive. Listen, he did Matchroom Square Garden during lockdown, which was extraordinary. A brilliant effort to do that. He's got the showman and the salesmanship in him. So he's also got a massive company behind him that also does darts and all those other sports I can't remember right now.
Darts, snooker, pool, does a lot of them.
Yeah. They're all pub games, aren't they? Really, but they're as opposed to sport, they're pub games, not really. No, but they are. But they make billions of pounds. And obviously his passion's in boxing. He's going to try and work with them, and that's what he'll do. He's also, I think, I tried to work out, and this is what I was going over last week. He's in his 8th year right now of the DAZN deal. Which was worth 7th or 8th year, which was worth, we were told, $1 billion over 8 years. So he's still got all that investment to work with, an incredible portfolio himself, and also a resonance out there. And if you were to compare one person to Dana White in boxing, it would probably be Eddie Hearn.
Eddie Hearn.
It?
It's Eddie Hearn. Yeah, it is 100%. Before we wrap this section, a couple of yes or no questions I want to ask you. Will AJ Fury happen on TKO?
Ooh. It can happen on either, and it depends where the loyalties lie. And let me just throw a little caveat in there. Would Dana White and Turki Alalshikh have been interested in Dave Allen, Johnny Fisher too?
No.
But that's a very interesting fight that we're all looking forward to, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's that.
I think they want the monster ones.
Yeah.
I think I've heard rumors of they want to do 4 Super Bowl-esque fights on TKO. Obviously, Canelo Crawford, I have no doubt will be on TKO. I have no doubt about it in my mind. That's going on TKO.
It looks that way now, doesn't it? From what we've seen on the videos.
Yeah.
It was going to start next year, But Turkey saying to Dana, no, September the 12th, September the 12th.
September 12th, and we know that's the date. A Friday again, by the way.
But Addy, what we haven't
so I
talked
think
about is the infrastructure that goes below Dana White, Nick Khan, and Turki Alalshikh. Who's going to run all that? Who's going to run it all? They're going to have to employ, presumably, a casket of people, a boatload of people, in order to implement all of this. Or do they buy out Top Rank? There's talk about that. Will Top Rank get their ESPN deal going onwards? Is that what TKO are after at ESPN? I don't know any of this. This is all speculation.
No. It's good though. This is good speculation. I mean, there are people like Richard Schaefer will definitely be involved in some capacity. I have no doubt about that. Now that he's back alongside Canelo, I can't see how conversation never happened with Richard, who obviously knows boxing inside out. There'll be a number of people in America that put their hands up, that lost jobs at HBO and Showtime, that'll be ready just to quickly get back into it. Experienced people, and not just behind the scenes, in front of the cameras as well. Jim Lampley, we know, is back from Ring Magazine. It is, but that's what Turkey seems to like.
Yeah,
he seems to like those old, established sort of faces. I know I'm hearing rumors of Max Kellerman coming back. So it's all the old guard basically coming back to run the ship, which is interesting. But maybe that's what is needed in America. Not over here, but in America, people just seem to resonate to those old people on HBO and Showtime, people they grew up listening to. Maybe it works.
Without you putting yourself in any jeopardy, because you've got a very prominent role at DAZN. Obviously, we've got Oscar De La Hoya, Frank Warren, and Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Queensbury and Golden Boy, all on DAZN now, which makes it a very powerful entity. It's feeling that people don't know what's happening, because obviously it looks like TKO are doing their own channel. But DAZN stays strong, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hope so. And look, I'm sure with the stables of the three that you just mentioned, I can't see how they don't stay strong. I mean, those are three heavyweight stables with a lot of talent, not just young talent, but experienced fighters as well that do good numbers. So look, there will be a concern. There has to be a concern just because Turkey is the most powerful man in boxing right now. And you've got one of the most fierce and sort of gunslinging promoters in Dana White. So there has to be a concern. But I feel like if those three come together, and it's probably a good thing that Frank and Eddie talk now, and that Eddie and Oscar talk. So if those three come together, there's just too many years of experience there, not just as promoters, but in Oscar's case, a fighter as well, where I can't see how they don't solve any problem that hits them. I just can't see it.
You asked me about Fury and Joshua. Will it be on TKO? I think it'll be on every channel.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is because, again, we've seen how much Turkey absolutely adores Tyson Fury. And I would say he likes AJ, not to the extent that he likes Fury, but he likes AJ as well. So, I mean, he's got personal relationships with these guys. If he wants to make a big splash into the boxing mob with TKO, there's no bigger fight to put on than AJ. In the UK, there's no bigger fight to put on than AJ Fury.
But Fury's just about to manage the UNICEF soccer team football team with Wayne Rooney, isn't he? Announced today, or people are putting it out there.
It is, yeah, you're right. Soccer Aid, he teased us, didn't he?
Social media.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know his team very well. I'm hearing that he's not that keen to come back. He loves doing leg day on a Friday with Paris. No doubt those.
Yeah, but give him time. When was that Usyk fight again? December.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only been a couple of months. Give him the itch will hit him very, very soon. And I've seen it with boxers that are 50 that still think they can throw hands. The itch will get him, and then once the numbers come across his table, and they will be some juicy numbers, it'll be the retirement fund, and it will happen. Fingers crossed.
What was the other question you were going to ask? Can you remember?
I was just gonna ask about Gervonta Davis. Do you think that they get Gervonta Davis? Think there's enough power for Turkey to get him?
Yeah, and also, by the way, it could be a bloodbath in terms of getting people from their agents as well. It could get very, very messy. There's the potential for that as well. And the final question is, we've neither of us have answered it, and I'll ask you first. Is boxing broken?
Absolutely not. But it wasn't that it was broken, but prior to Turkey coming in, it was definitely fractured.
Yeah, people didn't work together. Yeah, but that's why
it was definitely fractured.
It's kind of so debatable.
It's weird. The person like Turkey's fixed it to the point where it isn't broken, and
Now
Dana
he's
White
bringing
saying
the
it is broken.
revolution.
So I think Turkey needs to have a conversation with Dana. Like, oh, this isn't broken. I fixed it, Dana. What are you talking about? All right, you're listening to Find It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Up next, we're going to end the show looking ahead to this weekend's action. Welcome back. You're listening to Find It Extra on talkSPORT 2. Adi Oladipo, the great Gareth Davies. All right, let's look ahead to this weekend's action. Nick Ball takes on TJ Dohoney. TJ Dohoney, who recently fought Inoue. So you'll probably see where I'm going in a minute. Are you going to this one? Are you going up to Liverpool?
I am indeed. We've got a talkSPORT team up there. And we're doing live comms and watch along. I'm really looking forward to it. As you rightly said, TJ Doheny. You're the broadcaster now. How do you say it?
No. Trust me when I say I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the hardest surname. I mean, I pronounce some of the most difficult surnames, but this one, is it Dohoney? Is it Dohoney?
Do you know what? There are about 4 pronunciations out there, and no one's bloody got to the man and confirmed it. But he was knocked out in the 7th round by Naoya Inoue. He's fought all around the world in the last 2 or 3 years. So
everywhere.
It's a return to the British Isles for him, and I think Nick Ball can really make a statement. You know, I've been calling for the Inoue fight for ages at featherweight for Inoue, and it doesn't look like he's going to fight him next. But I think Nick Ball can really make a statement.
Yeah, it's easy once you have a recent performance from an Inoue victim. It's easy then to compare how Nick Ball gets on with him, and I expect Nick Ball to want to lay down a marker so that everyone gets excited about Inoue, because it's one thing fighting Inoue, but we want to see a guy fight Inoue where we think the guy can actually potentially win. And I think, look, Inoue would always be a favorite because he's just that special. But with Nick Ball, you just want to think, okay, can Nick Ball cause him some problems? Because Inoue is getting a bit of stick recently about his level of opponent, and I think Nick Ball's above the level that Inoue's been fighting recently. So look, I think Nick Ball looks good, as he always does. Rough, ready, probably goes a few rounds, probably gets hit a little bit, probably hits a bit more. That's just Nick Ball fights. So it should be excited. And Gareth, you did very quickly, you did say that you was at the Johnny Fisher Dave Ellen press conference. It's a good fight. Are you surprised it's only going to the copper box? There was a lot of talk about this fight being maybe a bit bigger, maybe potentially going to a bigger arena.
Talking to people behind the scenes, and by the way, Nick Ball for me was one of the fighters of the year last year. By the way, the Ronnie Rios, Ray Ford, and Ray Vargas draw that he should have won. I just think Nick Ball, one gear, would really challenge Inoue, and I think he'll win about 9-10. Last 3 rounds, I think he'll win for my prediction on Saturday night. I think talking to people behind the scenes about Allen or Fisher Allen too, they thought they might get 10 to 11,000 there, but they'd rather have a full copper bosh, if I'm allowed to say it still, copper box with 8,000 there, rather than 12 with a curtain at the O2 Arena.
Yeah. That I agree. Makes sense.
I applaud Johnny Fisher for taking the rematch because he's got a W on his record. And not everyone's done that. But Tyson Fury did it when he fought John McDermott, and many of us thought he lost that first fight in a very, very close fight. and he upended him in the second fight. Johnny, I like the look of Johnny on Friday. No messing about. They're going to Vegas for a 10-week, 9-week camp. Him and Mark Tibbs. Spoke to Mark Tibbs. Wants to get the job done this time. I'm glad the two of them are earning some good money. Good for them. But I think it's a 50-50 fight, and it's one that Johnny has to win, like convincingly win, in my view.
Yeah, he has to, especially if they've got or harbour ambitions about sort of taking that next step. David Adelaide is fighting for the British title next, and that's where Johnny should be looking at for his next opponents, that kind of level. But if he loses, then it's a tough road back. All right, you've been listening to Final Extra on talkSPORT 2. Big thanks, as always, to the main man, Gareth A. Davies, who, by the way, has a new book out. I say new. It's about 4 or 5 months old now, but it's new for me because I only got a copy on the weekend, Call of the Warrior, and it's fantastic. I'm only 10 pages in, and I will say this, the effort, I've been told it took 5 years to put this book together. And normally when you hear that, you're like, why would it take 5 years? It looked like it took a decade because there is so much effort that's gone into this book. The photos are fantastic. The words written to kind of go with the photos are just, it's insane. And I only hope that in 10 years, when you write another book, that I might be in it somehow because we now have a relationship. But honestly, congratulations, Gareth. I think it's a great book. And look, if anyone hasn't got it, Gareth, where can they get the book from?
HailMaryPublishing.co.uk. There's only about 400 left, by the way, and they're all personally signed.
Yeah, mine has been signed with an extra bit of a word in from Gareth as well. But honestly, I'm not just trying to plug it because Gareth's my good friend. I think it's a fantastic book, and it's not just for boxing fans, it's for sport fans. Correct. I think we can all appreciate stories about fighters and stories about sports people. But then when you have, again, images to go with it, I think it just rounds it off perfectly. So,
black and white.
So well done and congratulations on it.
Yeah.
Black and white as well. The book looks so fantastic on my shelf. It's hardback. Is that the right phrase? Hard copy, whatever it's called.
2 kilos.
Hardback.
Your word is so kind. It's really, really appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, it's a great book. It's a great book. All right, look, if you've missed any of this show, you can listen to it as a podcast. Find it under the Fight Night banner on the talkSPORT app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from. We'll be back with you next week.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.